Chapter 45 of Nicholas Nickleby by Charles Dickens. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Bruce Peary. Nicholas Nickleby by Charles Dickens. Chapter 45, containing matter of a surprising kind. As we gang awa for Lunnon tomorrow neet, and as I dinnot know that I was e'er so happy in all my days, Mr. Nickleby, ding, but I will tak another glass to our next merry meeting. So said John Browdie, rubbing his hands with great joyousness, and looking round him with a ruddy shining face, quite in keeping with the declaration. The time at which John found himself in this enviable condition was the same evening to which the last chapter bore reference. The place was the cottage, and the assembled company were Nicholas, Mrs. Nickleby, Mrs. Browdie, Kate Nickleby, and Smike. A very merry party they had been. Mrs. Nickleby, knowing of her son's obligations to the honest Yorkshireman, had, after some demur, yielded her consent to Mr. and Mrs. Browdie being invited out to tea. In the way of which arrangement there were at first sundry difficulties and obstacles, arising out of her not having had an opportunity of calling upon Mrs. Browdie first. For although Mrs. Nickleby very often observed with much complacency, as most punctilious people do, that she had not an atom of pride or formality about her, still she was a great stickler for dignity and ceremonies, and as it was manifest that, until a call had been made, she could not be, politely speaking and according to the laws of society, even cognizant of the fact of Mrs. Browdie's existence, she felt her situation to be one of peculiar delicacy and difficulty. "The call must originate with me, my dear," said Mrs. Nickleby. "That's indispensable. The fact is, my dear, that it's necessary there should be some sort of condescension on my part, and that I should show this young person that I am willing to take notice of her. There's a very respectable-looking young man," added Mrs. Nickleby, after a short consideration, "who is conductor to one of the omnibuses that go by here, and who wears a glazed hat. Your sister and I have noticed him very often. He has a wart upon his nose, Kate, you know, exactly like a gentleman's servant." "Have all gentlemen's servants warts upon their noses, mother?" asked Nicholas. "Nicholas, my dear, how very absurd you are," returned his mother. "Of course I mean that his glazed hat looks like a gentleman's servant, and not the wart upon his nose, though even that is not so ridiculous as it may seem to you, for we had a footboy once who had not only a wart but a wen also, and a very large wen too, and he demanded to have his wages raised in consequence, because he found it came very expensive. Let me see, what was I? Oh yes, I know. The best way that I can think of would be to send a card, and my compliments, I've no doubt he'd take 'em for a spot of porter, by this young man, to the Saracen with Two Necks. If the waiter took him for a gentleman's servant, so much the better. Then all Mrs. Browdie would have to do would be to send her card back by the carrier. He could easily come with a double knock, and there's an end of it." "My dear mother," said Nicholas, "I don't suppose such unsophisticated people as these ever had a card of their own, or ever will have." "Oh, that indeed, Nicholas, my dear," returned Mrs. Nickleby, "that's another thing. If you put it upon that ground, why, of course I have no more to say than that I have no doubt that they are very good sort of persons, and that I have no kind of objection to their coming here to tea if they like, and shall make a point of being very civil to them if they do." The point being thus effectually set at rest, and Mrs. Nickleby duly placed in the patronizing and mildly condescending position which became her rank and matrimonial years, Mr. and Mrs. Browdie were invited and came, and as they were very deferential to Mrs. Nickleby, and seemed to have a becoming appreciation of her greatness, and were very much pleased with everything, the good lady had more than once given Kate to understand, in a whisper, that she thought they were the very best meaning people she had ever seen, and perfectly well behaved. And thus it came to pass that John Browdie declared in the parlour after supper, to wit, and 20 minutes before 11 o'clock p.m., that he had never been so happy in all his days. Nor was Mrs. Browdie much behind her husband in this respect, for that young matron, whose rustic beauty contrasted very prettily with the more delicate loveliness of Kate, and without suffering by the contrast either, for each served, as it were, to set off and decorate the other, could not sufficiently admire the gentle and winning manners of the young lady, or the engaging affability of the elder one. Then Kate had the art of turning the conversation to subjects upon which the country girl, bashful at first in strange company, could feel herself at home; and if Mrs. Nickleby was not quite so felicitous at times in the selection of topics of discourse, or if she did seem, as Mrs. Browdie expressed it, rather high in her notions, still nothing could be kinder; and that she took considerable interest in the young couple was manifest from the very long lectures on housewifery with which she was so obliging as to entertain Mrs. Browdie's private ear, which were illustrated by various references to the domestic economy of the cottage, in which, those duties falling exclusively upon Kate, the good lady had about as much share, either in theory or practice, as any one of the statues of the 12 Apostles which embellish the exterior of St. Paul's Cathedral. "Mr. Browdie," said Kate, addressing his young wife, "is the best humoured, the kindest and heartiest creature I ever saw. If I were oppressed with I don't know how many cares, it would make me happy only to look at him." "He does seem indeed, upon my word, a most excellent creature, Kate," said Mrs. Nickleby, "most excellent; and I am sure that at all times it will give me pleasure, really pleasure now, to have you, Mrs. Browdie, to see me in this plain and homely manner. We make no display," said Mrs. Nickleby, with an air which seemed to insinuate that they could make a vast deal if they were so disposed. "No fuss, no preparation. I wouldn't allow it. I said, 'Kate, my dear, you will only make Mrs. Browdie feel uncomfortable, and how very foolish and inconsiderate that would be.'" "I am very much obliged to you, I am sure, ma'am," returned Mrs. Browdie gratefully. "It's nearly 11 o'clock, John. I am afraid we are keeping you up very late, ma'am." "Late!" cried Mrs. Nickleby, with a sharp thin laugh, and one little cough at the end, like a note of admiration expressed. "This is quite early for us. We used to keep such hours. 12, 1, 2, 3 o'clock was nothing to us. Balls, dinners, card parties. Never were such rakes as the people about where we used to live. I often think now, I am sure, that how we ever could go through with it is quite astonishing, and that is just the evil of having a large connection and being a great deal sought after, which I would recommend all young married people steadily to resist, though of course, and it's perfectly clear, and a very happy thing too, I think, that a very few young married people can be exposed to such temptations. There was one family in particular that used to live about a mile from us, not straight down the road, but turning sharp off to the left by the turnpike where the Plymouth mail ran over the donkey, that were quite extraordinary people for giving the most extravagant parties, with artificial flowers and champagne and variegated lamps, and in short every delicacy of eating and drinking that the most singular epicure could possibly require. I don't think that there ever were such people as those Peltiroguses. You remember the Peltiroguses, Kate?" Kate saw that for the ease and comfort of the visitors it was high time to stay this flood of recollection, so answered that she entertained of the Peltiroguses a most vivid and distinct remembrance, and then said that Mr. Browdie had half promised early in the evening that he would sing a Yorkshire song, and that she was most impatient that he should redeem his promise, because she was sure it would afford her mamma more amusement and pleasure than it was possible to express. Mrs. Nickleby, confirming her daughter with the best possible grace, for there was patronage in that too, and a kind of implication that she had a discerning taste in such matters, and was something of a critic, John Browdie proceeded to consider the words of some north country ditty, and to take his wife's recollection respecting the same. This done, he made divers ungainly movements in his chair, and singling out one particular fly on the ceiling from the other flies there asleep, fixed his eyes upon him, and began to roar a meek sentiment, supposed to be uttered by a gentle swain fast pining away with love and despair, in a voice of thunder. At the end of the first verse, as though some person without had waited until then to make himself audible, was heard a loud and violent knocking at the street door, so loud and so violent indeed, that the ladies started as by one accord, and John Browdie stopped. "It must be some mistake," said Nicholas carelessly. "We know nobody who would come here at this hour." Mrs. Nickleby surmised, however, that perhaps the counting-house was burnt down, or perhaps the Mr. Cheerybles had sent to take Nicholas into partnership, which certainly appeared highly probable at that time of night, or perhaps Mr. Linkinwater had run away with the property, or perhaps Miss La Creevy was taken in, or perhaps... But a hasty exclamation from Kate stopped her abruptly in her conjectures, and Ralph Nickleby walked into the room. "Stay," said Ralph.